What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Taylor Halliday of Ravenna. You can check them out at ravenna.ai. And Taylor, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of the top software series, we had the co-founder of Zapier, who Taylor knows well, Wade Foster, and just amazing what they've done and how they've grown throughout the years. So you can check that episode out. I had Brett Brauman on, who is a growth operating partner at Khosla Ventures, who also invested in Ravenna, and I know Taylor knows Brett as well. That's also a great episode on just growth in SaaS companies. Some of the other ones, the co-founder of Pipedrive on, when I had them on, they were, I think, 10,000 customers. Now I think they have over 100,000 customers. But it's always a rocky journey, Taylor, as you know. So even now it looks easy or whatever from the outside. It was definitely, there are a lot of ups and downs. So it's interesting to hear that. And then I had the founder of Mailshake on. So check those out more on inspiredinsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise25. At Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. We do that in a few ways. One, we're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, accountability, and the full execution and production. We actually get people on podcasts so they can, have their authority on various shows across the internet. And then number 3 is we are an easy button for a company's corporate gifting. So we make gifting and staying top of mind to your clients, partners, and prospects simple and easy, and actually affordable. So you send us the addresses, we do everything else, and actually send a campaign of 3 to 4 gifts a year for 3 to 4 years. So Taylor, we kind of call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background to make it stress-free and possible for companies to build amazing relationships. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships, and I'm always looking at ways how now I can give to my best relationships. I personally have found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and the companies I most admire, and also send them sweet treats in the mail. So if you've thought about doing any of those things, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. I am super excited to introduce Taylor Halliday, co-founder of Ravenna with Kevin Coleman. Prior to Ravenna, Taylor was a director of AI and new products at Zapier. I think Kevin describes you as a technical genius from what I've heard on the internet. And Kevin previously actually worked for Amazon Web Services. And they also completed a fellowship at Y Combinator, and Ravenna raised $15 million with companies such as Madrona Venture Group and Khosla Ventures. And Ravenna is an AI solution that provides smarter support and happier employees through an AI-enabled help desk. So basically what they do is they provide internal support that starts in Slack and resolves with AI and intelligent workflows. So Taylor, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Jeremy, thanks for having me on.
That's Kevin's words, not mine. So I'm just saying.
The flattery is a match right now. Yeah. Appreciate that.
So just tell people about Ravenna and what you're doing. When you're doing that, I'm going to pull up your website so we can share that too.
Cool. I mean, you did a pretty good tee up. At the basis of it, it's you can think about it as like the IT help desk, the HR help desk, like pretty much operations roles at large at companies. At a certain size, have the need to have some software to support their colleagues, their internal employees. And as I just mentioned, you did as well. The most prevalent form of that typically is like the IT help desk and HR help desk, what have you. And so at Ravenna, we've decided that basically a lot of the incumbents in this space weren't making the best use of, call it like modern AI technology. And then on top of that too, if you look at a lot of the incumbents in this space, I would just, I don't know, go on a limb to say that the software experience is called lackluster. And so we really want to come in here and provide an absolutely just unmatched experience, both from a product design, UX, and also from an automation angle. So we go ahead, partner with IT groups predominantly, although we are working with some HR teams and revenue ops teams. And we'll go through there and be the software that really is kind of the front door, if you will, for their operations at large at the company. So if you work at a company and have an IT help desk or an HR help desk, you can imagine that Ravenna effectively is a software that you'll interface with when you reach out for assistance, for help. And in the realm of IT, that could be something like a software access request. In the realm of call HR, that could be a benefits question, and revenue ops. There's a kind of myriad of a lot of questions around enablement for a lot of sales teams. And so, and when I'm just actually kind of relooking at our site, one of the kind of big things I think that we really focus on, and this is purely just like from a lot of customer interviews before we even wrote any code, was that feedback from a lot of IT, HR, call it operations professionals, was that a lot of the existing solutions just did not integrate well with where people work. And where people work effectively is the team chat based applications. And so Slack is the one that we were just doubling down on super hard. The idea that, like I said before, we want to create an incredible experience for the employees of the organization with the software. And we have a very, very sharp belief that the best experience here is just natively integrated with the team chat integration like none other. And so it's Ravenna.
Yeah. And what's interesting is what I like about the site and what you do is you kind of look at user behavior, and you don't want to go around what user behavior is, right? You're like, they're already in Slack. They're already sending messages, they're already answering questions. How do we basically organize it, right? And so you can see here, it's like turn Slack chaos into clarity. So what are some, I don't know, use cases, right? We're looking at, obviously they can turn these Slack messages into tickets. I know like SOPs. What are some things that you've seen use cases for Ravenna?
Sure. And actually, before I touch on that, I want to just kind of double down on something that you kind of subtly, just kind of talked over for a second. But one of the fun things about working in this company and being so tied into Slack, from a person who spends a lot of time thinking about how do you automate things. I'm a Zapier person. We just talked about that. It'd be popular to call it AI right now. I always say automation. It's effectively, in my opinion, kind of what really the value prop of AI really is at the end of the day. But a lot of times, if you're starting, let's say, an AI company, you're faced with this like cold start problem, right? Like you have this great solution, you have some great tech, an algorithm, what have you. And then when I say cold start, in the sense of like more often than not, a lot of times, these companies are faced with like, I just need more data, more instances to actually kind of refine, do evals, what have you, on the different things that we're trying to go ahead and fine tune. One of like the just fun things about basically this market is, and then we get dropped into people's Slacks, and we'll have more often than not, years of just requests, interactions. We know based upon being plugged into there, what people are asking, how they've asked for it. We know about the lingo of the company, the funny acronyms, all that type of stuff. And so kind of call it out. You mentioned like kind of the data of Slack. I just wanted to double tap on that because it really is such a powerful thing to actually just be able to kind of start with effectively. So anyways, though, to answer your question, what do you automate here? Like, what are we doing here? So when we talk about automating for the operations roles, this is a big generalization, and this changes on a per customer basis. You can think about basically the types of automations are kind of like split into, like bifurcate roughly. So if you were to look at, let's say, an average IT help desk channel inside of Slack, sometimes they're called help desk or an HR help desk, what have you. The nature of the questions can be kind of roughly divided into like one group is like this, hey, I have a question. And the answer to that question is just written down somewhere. Okay. Classically, it might be written down in a knowledge base, KB. More interestingly, it could be in Slack. It could be in past tickets. Like a lot of different things that you could go ahead and draw on to actually try to figure out from an automation standpoint. This person's asking a question. There is knowledge somewhere in this organization. And so it's our job at Ravenna to go ahead, find all the relevant pieces, rank them appropriately, and figure out what is the best way to answer this question based upon pre-existing knowledge. And so that's half of, I'd say, the stuff that we automate in these channels. The other half of it has to do more of, I'd say, like the interesting things like actions. Okay. And so this is kind of a funny, contrived example. And rather than like, the policy for taking time off, I want to take time off now, or sorry, in a week from now, or whatever. Right. I guess what I'm trying to illustrate here is that like there's a difference between asking a question where the answer for that is just something that's written down versus something that needs to be taken and action upon. And so the other half of the stuff that we do here is we help take actions upon basically those requests. And so what that does is it relieves the need for a human to either kind of look in their knowledge base and find that question to the answer, or B, go into the system of record or what have you, and these other things that they just don't have, that the employees don't have access to due to a myriad of either security, licensing, or whatever concerns. Ravenna kind of can sit there and just take a lot of folks out of the equation for a lot of these kind of like, rote questions that just don't need human involvement.
Talk about, and I think it looks like you integrate, obviously it starts in Slack, but you can pull in, your AI can analyze, people connect other applications they use too.
Absolutely. There's a cross section right there. We do a lot more than that though. But absolutely, it's everything we do here is frankly customer led. And so we connected quite a few systems at this point. It's all just based upon customer feedback. Confluence isn't listed there. A handful of other ones aren't as well, but Google Drive, what have you.
So basically, if someone asks a question and they just connect their Google Drive or their Notion into there, and then it kind of just draws from all of the collective knowledge of those places to answer it.
Sort of. So there's an approach here that I think is worth calling out, like in how we kind of think about this, and it's a little different than I think a lot of popularized like enterprise search products. So if you've ever heard of a product called Glean, and there's a bunch of them like Glean, but Glean is very much like a horizontal enterprise search. The value prop there roughly is like, hey, you give us everything we got, and we're going to suck through all that type of stuff, and we're going to present it back to the entire company. It's this very peanut butter spread approach where like we're just going to grab everything that's ever been written and like give it to all the employees, and then we're going to create a better experience there. And I'm sure they have a better pitch than what I just gave, but regardless, way we think about it honestly is, I said before, like we have 3 folks predominantly we work with. We do work with some other groups, but like IT, HR, revenue ops. Inside our product, we go ahead and basically create a UX where, yes, we integrate with these things, but we've just gotten a lot of feedback around like, look, the problem about these enterprise-wide search stuff is they're pulling up stuff that, yeah, it might have a keyword that overlaps or something like that, but it's not really relevant. There's so much stuff out there in like the universe of company documentation and data. And so what I'm trying to say is that we go kind of the extra mile from a user experience standpoint to let you be really precise about what data it is you want inside that realm of your IT help desk, or your HR help desk, right? And furthermore, we just really, really try extremely hard to make sure that we are never answering a question that you don't explicitly like give us data for, right? So if you ask us who are the 49ers and you didn't tell us who the 49ers were, despite the fact these models absolutely know who the 49ers are or what city they came from, we won't answer it. So anyways, it's a subtle yet like I think very, very important distinction, because it has actually been pretty much kind of like the yes on a lot of different purchases, being like, we have had enterprise search wide things. It's been good or okay. But it hasn't been able to kind of really get down into the nitty gritty of the details that we get asked for these help desks. And the way that we, basically think that we win here effectively is just making it really explicit about the data that comes into play, and the data that's allowed inside of these channels.
Taylor, I want to hear more about niche. Obviously, anyone who uses Slack and wants to have a better, support their employees and make it easier, faster, more intelligent can use this. But talk about why IT is a big component. I know you help HR and revenue ops. Why focus on IT as a niche?
Good question. And, part of it is, I'll just go there. There's several reasons here. And so classically, if you were to look up, like, what is this help desk market? Okay. And even when I first started looking at it, it wasn't super clear to me kind of what the larger market here was. It's a long-standing market. It's called ITSM. Okay. Giveaway. IT is half the acronym. So this software is not just been around recently. It's not just the AI. It's been very much a thing since, basically, I don't know, since IT, HR operations groups have pretty much decided that they need software to make their lives easier. Okay. And so IT has typically been the entry point for a lot of these type of like purchases and sales. I think a couple of reasons why. One is that this is basically software that kind of can span across operations groups more often than not, especially call it in like the enterprise to mid-market to upper mid-market. IT is kind of the gatekeeper for a lot of those type of software purchases. Okay. And so, how to come to be exactly. There might have been a little bit more of, hey, someone's smart, the buyers can be IT, might as well put them in the acronym. That's part of it. And then the other part as well, I would say that, IT especially is very, very close typically to the team chat applications and the control mechanisms there. It's the folks who allow and who really take pride in making sure that they're, writing or letting the right applications inside there. And then just furthermore, they also just have a myriad of requests and questions that come across their desk, which are highly automatable, frankly speaking. So perhaps that's the most important one. But there's a bit of kind of retro reasons, and there's a bit of just kind of current affairs.
No, that makes sense. I mean, it seems like the IT, and even across lots of industries, are the decision makers, gatekeepers, and everything flows through them. And if you can make their job easier, better for the organization, then you can, essentially, kind of go across different markets in the end too.
Yeah. There's another, I will say one more thing too, is that, one of the things that's exciting about this market, which I always kind of hoped would become true, and it really is proven to become true as we've, gone to market more. It's not just the IT help desk. I've already said HR, revenue ops, right? But what's been happening is that we'll go through and start working with a team, IT predominantly, but it can kind of start anywhere. And we just get inbound. Like, wait a minute, I put in an IT help desk request. I work in, name it, marketing ops, right? We have an operations desk. Like, where did the software come from? There's a lot of visibility that you get just by being in someone's Slack, which is great from an expansion standpoint. It goes back to your why IT question. That glide path of expansion, going from IT, who's already blessed the software, to a marketing group or to a different HR group, it's a much easier, I would just say, glide path, rather than like, we started with revenue ops, they just kind of okayed it in there, and then it goes to IT. And then you're going to go through a lot more different reviews and what have you. So again, there's just kind of some, I don't know,
it's more like frictionless, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. But it's definitely a component of why we also, to be clear too, we're always looking just for a front door in the organization. We have a strong belief, like I said, that once you get in there, you can show great value and efficiency, and it's going to fester. It's going to go ahead and expand. But the better glide path is typically to start with IT.
What was, Taylor, a first milestone from a customer perspective within Ravenna from when you first started, like a first customer milestone?
Someone who said
how did you get your first customer?
Someone who said they would actually first work with us. That's a big milestone. Yeah, it's it's funny. I kind of have this thing where I think in terms of kind of logarithmically, like how to actually go ahead and build for scale. And a lot of times people are like, hey, we have to do XYZ thing from the engineering standpoint, because we might have 1 million users one day. And I don't know. The thing I kind of preach to the company is like, look, guys, nothing matters until we have that first customer. After that, high fives, add a zero. And that matters is getting to 10 customers, and then to 100, then to 1,000. So that's kind of the scale I look at. So anyways, back to your first question. The first customer being home-based, shout out to John Wallman and the crew over there. It's every customer, I think, like, especially like your first one, it's just like in the early stages, like, oh man, you went on a limb, you believe with me, you kind of see the vision here, and it's, every startup is an ugly duckling, so to speak. And we're on our path to try to get prettier along the way. And part of that, first several customers are always going to be the folks who acknowledge kind of like the warts, if you will, on the way things are, but they can see basically the vision. They align, they agree with you on kind of your version of the future. And what they're willing to take a leap of faith. So anyways, back to your question, I think, like, what was what was kind of the first milestone there? It was getting, I would say, like, a big thing here is trust. I always think about customers and faith in you, and it really comes to me in terms of trust. So we've already covered it. Ravenna, if you work with us, we're going to be inside what is effectively the front door to your organization. Okay, so think about, you're an HR operations manager. Okay, the best folks in these operations roles think about their job not as just being IT or HR. They think about their job as just delivering great service to their colleagues. And I think, from being on the other side of the fence there and always requesting service, I never kind of thought about it like that. But I'm telling you, the pros that we deal with here are obsessed with making sure that they deliver great service to their colleagues. And so they use us because they think that we can help them deliver an outstanding experience. Okay. And so I guess I'm trying to say is that like when we actually go ahead and get deployed into one of these channels, um, there's a lot of weight. I feel like I think that like, it's not just one person. It's like the entire group is taking a chance and making sure that or hoping that Ravenna is going to go ahead and be able to help them provide such an up-leveled experience from what they have. And so, anyways, the first milestone, I'll just say it, yeah, is being the front door. It's being that front door inside of an HR operations channel. It's a leap of faith in so many ways, and it's not lost upon us, and we work extremely hard to make sure that we maintain that trust for our customers.
I'd love to hear, Taylor, some valuable feedback you got along the way that changed the product. Early on, customers gave you feedback that changed and maybe features or things like that. I mean, I think that's an advantage I find when I'm working with a company. You mentioned like the warts or just the beginning stages, but like what's cool about that from my experience is I can make suggestions and they'll actually implement them. I remember early on I was using Acuity Scheduling, Gavin Zaklinski, and I mentioned, hey, it'd be cool if you had this feature. And like the next day he's like, oh, we added that feature. And they eventually like sold to Squarespace, but it was just cool to get have the feedback, and they took it and they implement it. Not saying like obviously people have priority lists and that doesn't always happen, but I'm curious for you, what is some essential feedback you got? Because you guys, from what I've researched, are very customer centric, and you really pay attention to what, even I've heard you and Kevin both say this, like you pay close attention even on the initial discovery calls to hear what people are saying, from what problems they're experiencing, to see how that helps your product. So I'm love to hear some of the early on feedback or even feedback lately that you've incorporated.
I can go through the channels right now and find the minutia stuff. I'll try to think of some big rocks things. Maybe I'll preface this by saying that like as a principle, I always kind of think about when you think about customer focus here. I kind of joke and always say like none of us are as smart as we think we are. And I try to hold that like value like pretty closely, especially when we're talking about building products. Like I have an inkling of an idea. I think to be clear, I've actually decent amount of confidence in a lot of times, like my own product decisions, what have you. But like you always have the humility in the face of customers, right? Like whatever they say is truly basically like the golden path. And if you like subscribe to that, it's very illuminating, and frankly, it kind of makes life a little easier. So anyways, going back to like, your actual question here, what are some big rocks things in the early days? In the early days, one of the things that I didn't expect, I'm trying to draw, like what's a good one here? How about this? I didn't appreciate the sheer importance of reporting, analytics, and insights for operations roles at large, or IT, HR. And let me explain that a little bit here. So the way that you basically, you get budget, performance, review, what have you. Basically, the way you perform, you translate, communicate progress of your job as an IT, HR, whatever professional, is to give great insight into the critical work that you are doing and the value that you provide to the organization. Okay, so. You're going through we're about.
I'm just looking. I figured I would pull up the features because, like, I'm sure all of these came from someone suggesting something or asking for something at some point, right?
Oh, I didn't come up with a triage mechanism by myself. Yeah, no, 100%. Like every single one of these was like flushed out via a lot of feedback. But sticking what I said before on the analytics and insights, I would just say that there's been a lot of feedback into like, look, if you were gonna propose it, we're gonna put some software into these channels. Like it needs to actually, if you guys want to win, make it extremely easy for us to tell a story about the value that we're providing with your software. And the way you do that is you execute extremely well on just easy, beautiful, out of the box insights and analytics. So that was kind of a big one that turns into a pretty large feature set that we have been just trying to make bulletproof. And it hasn't been released yet, but we're going to revamp of the system. And we just did our internal demo day on Friday, where everyone kind of shows off some of the work that we've done. And a bunch of people were joking that we built a world-class analytics suite that has some ticket product features as well. Anyways, it's pretty cool, and so that's I think a big thing, just an area of investment that like has just been drilled into us by a lot of feedback, and we've taken it extremely seriously, and it's a big component of what we do here.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's like how one company starts is never how they end up. So who knows, like through customer feedback, you may be the world-class, analytics platform or something, 10 years from now based on whatever customers are asking from you, right? So who knows where it's going to go.
Who knows? Like I said too, in a sense, it almost makes life easier when you subscribe to just kind of really being obsessed with what your customers are telling you. And fighting that I think is a trail of tears. And embracing that is very illuminating. But I'm telling you, it's a lot of work too. Once to your point around like the feedback that you gave to, I can't remember which company you mentioned, like a calendar app, what have you.
Yeah, Acuity. Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool because I think people are like, oh, sweet, I can just request anything from these folks. So you get a mountain of feedback, which is great. And I think that part of the, another thing you mentioned too is that you thought it was really cool that they came out with that feature quickly, right? Of the many, like, you know, I don't know, of the many things that you got to kind of do, I feel like as a startup is you got to play down, not excuse me, not plan it. You have to play up basically that what you're talking about. And so more specifically, what I mean is like you have to just give someone a just incredible feeling of like they're getting great service out of you. Because like if you're a startup, you think about us versus the incumbent. Like an incumbent has all the advantages in the world, distribution, money, all these different things that we just don't have, right? Every other kind of startup doesn't have. And so what do you have, right? One of the things that like, they will never have effectively the incumbents is effectively just speed, right? And so that's speed for product development. That's speed for getting back to customers. And like, I'll give an example. One of our stakeholders at Zapier was just like, look, part of the reason we love working with you is that like the amount of service that you are giving us in terms of just, responding to our issues, hopping on everything we talk about, like that's like an absolute, premium pack, enterprise package, right? Whereas like, funny enough, between us, I know it's about to be on a podcast, I would pay them for that feedback, right? They're talking about how they would pay me for that service. And like, it's so, it's very much a thing that you embrace it. It's very, very important to them. It's also extremely important to me.
I do one of the things I wrote down here, Taylor, which I love, you said is just whatever the customers say is the golden path. So I love that, what you said there. And I want to go to back in time a little bit to
Yeah.
Y Combinator
Mm-hmm.
and what you learned there. Because I think there were a lot of learnings that you and Kevin took from your experience at Y Combinator.
Yep. I think I just said one, which is none of us are as smart as we think we are. Went into that, very much thinking that kind of had the world figured out, had the best idea for a product. Um, Shout out to actually, it was Kevin Hale was one of our group partners, and I'm sure he doesn't remember this, but I remember this extremely well because I was just an engineer, didn't know what I was kind of doing in terms of like call it SaaS business. And I remember he was talking, it might have been the first day, it was just talking to me like, hey, what are you guys building? And we were building a customer data platform. Told him that. And he was like, cool, like, who's your customer? And I was like, everybody. And he was like, wrong answer, like, I was like, what? Anyways, and so that was a good like wake up call for just like call it like SaaS fundamentals and business metrics. And I don't think we were alone there. I think more often than not, a lot of the I can't really comment now, but I think back then, especially Y Combinator kind of erred on the side of like, hey, we think these folks are reasonably technical smart and they might not know squat about SaaS businesses. I do remember actually the first day or second day, they were like, ARR, what does it stand for? And people are like taking notes, actually, stuff, right? And so myself included. But it's trial by fire, which is super fun. And so I don't know, that was narrowing down and actually having a very, very, very like disciplined focus about who you're building for. Now I just tell that story. I think it's one of my kind of core learnings from there, among a lot of other things. But yeah.
The next, and obviously you took that to heart and you both really focused on a specific focus, a specific niche, and a need for that, particular niche. There was also a pivotal point with Staples. You want to talk about that?
Sure. In the ashes of what was our YC company, we try to figure out kind of the next move. And it happens, a lot of times folks get in the YC and then think they have the world figured out like us, and it turns out you don't. We decided early on that as people kind of have different perspectives on this. We just decided that like it wasn't so much thrown in the towel that the company, the CDP that we were building, just it was just a wrong call it founder market fit. And I feel like I don't know if we coined that term or not, but just didn't feel like we should be building this thing. As I took Kevin's advice to heart, started learning about the buyer, who's customer success. I was never a customer success manager. Didn't know anything about these people's wants, needs, or anything. So that's kind of when we're like, you know what, let's go figure out something else. In the ashes of that, Kevin and I turned around, tried to figure out the next product, and ended up deciding to just consult for a little bit to try to figure out the next problem set. And we struck it lucky right out of the gate. Met the folks who run technology and innovation at Staples, and skipping a couple steps, decided that it would be a good idea to hire Kevin and I to build a team independently to help them execute on turning what is known as the easy button, which is like a piece of brand marketing next to plastic buttons, turning that into a full-blown Amazon Alexa competitor. Chipset, board, like everything, AI and all this type of stuff. And so
yeah, if anyone saw the old school commercials for Staples, there's like literally a big easy button. Someone wants something and they just kind of hit the easy button. I don't remember the full commercial, but like
Yep.
Staples then shows up with it right away or whatever.
That was
it is.
easy.
Yeah, exactly. So they
anyways,
wanted you to create the internal easy button, I guess, or internal easy button, but external easy button inside their platform.
Yep. It was a lot of fun, a lot of different reasons why, very stressful too. On the line for a pretty big delivery that was being announced as the keynote at the World of Watson conference in Las Vegas by their CEO of IBM, and we were on the clock to get this thing out. So we had to build a team. I would say it's a crash course in a lot of the AI and a lot of the kind of fundamentals we're drawing on today. Frankly, it's a lot of natural language processing. This is pre-transformers. We're doing a lot of other tricks of the trade then, so to speak, and just trying to execute on a really great natural language system to help folks be able to order via Staples from a full-blown mechanical easy button. So
How did you meet Staples?
it was a connection from Kevin, to be frank with you. Life has funny different ways. And it was the innovation officer there. And, I think timing's everything. We kind of were casually meeting. I think about something else entirely. And then just really kicked it off. And he was like, look, I wasn't going to bring this up with you guys, but have this other initiative. I kind of thought we were meeting for this reason. Luck so have it that I am really trying to find a group of just innovative folks to help us execute on this big initiative we have. Would you be interested in taking a look? And that's kind of how the trail got started.
I just find, Taylor, in life and in business, yeah, you could say you struck it lucky somewhat, but I think of like it's really relationships in the end. It's connections and relationships. And like you had relationships in you and Kevin with Zapier and Amazon, and you went through Y Combinator, and we just accumulate these amazing relationships that then you just never know where it's going to lead or opportunities it's going to bring. So obviously, whatever definition of luck, opportunity meets hard work and skill and all those things kind of came together at that point.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that definition for what it's worth as well. It's I don't know. I also think you can't be very prescriptive about it. That's kind of the fun thing about luck at the end of the day is that you got a bunch of chances to do these kind of fun things, and the pieces might come together in these really fun, interesting, odd ways that frankly you never would expect. But I guess that's kind of the journey, and that's kind of the fun in it. So
yeah, I don't know who said that, whose quote it was, but it's like, would you rather be good or lucky? And they're like, I'd rather be lucky. And even Bill Gates talks about how he attributes his success to luck also,
Yeah, there's a fair amount of chance in everything, and I subscribe to that as well. Is that at the end of the day, you do what you can, and you try to set up the stage, the context, if you will. That there's a handful of quotes I'm actually forgetting, but effectively, yeah, like you try to set the stage, try to set yourself up to get lucky. Effectively, if it doesn't happen, life is still fine. It's great. But yeah, you try to kind of set the pieces in play for chance.
So it goes from like Y Combinator, Staples, you have this opportunity and you both really capitalize on it and build something cool there. Then how do you get to Ravenna from there?
Sure. Kevin and I ended up running that consultancy that we worked with Staples on for quite a while. Ended up shutting it down around 2020. At that time, I was trying to figure out kind of the next startup to want to work on. Kevin decided that he wanted to go to AWS to kind of learn the fundamentals of the cloud, and I was in between. And I came across the Zapier founders, I believe via kind of the YC connection. Ended up talking to Mike Knoop, and who's one of the founders at Zapier, about helping them come in to build like the first second product. Originally, I had my heart set on going back to try to start another company. The only problem was I had no clue what that was. So talking to Mike, it started to sound like a pretty good, thing. Like, hey, Zapier's a great company. Coming for a couple of months, do some contracting, and so I was for it. And to be honest with you, it's kind of funny because I came to Zapier, and 1 week later, the pandemic hit. So like, oh my gosh, it's actually really great being associated and have the privilege to work for such an incredible company. And just a quick side note here, Zapier is just, it's such a cool place for a founder, for anyone who was interested in AI. It's a very, very, very innovative, supportive company, and I just couldn't think of a better place to be, especially retrospectively, for someone who is kind of wants to go ahead and build new products. And so, but coincidentally, that's what ended up carving out a role for myself there to do. I built that first product, and then built another one, built the engineering teams up, what have you, and basically got to a spot where I ran what's called new product development over there. So build these products up, get the engineering teams all set up, from the product standpoint as well, and then hopefully graduate them to the rest of the org. And then more recently, Zapier, just like a lot of other companies, is trying to figure out what to make of some of like the recent, recent at the time release of ChatGPT. Rocked them in a couple of interesting ways, just like a lot of other folks. And so I repurposed my role to run AI engineering for Zapier.
And so when do you and Kevin reunite?
After
was that a hard thing? Because you guys have worked together for a long time, Y Combinator, then this consultancy, and then I'm not saying it's like a breakup, but it's like, okay, we're going to go our separate ways for a little bit. Like, what's that conversation like?
I've always thought about it as just kind of getting some more perspective, frankly.
So you knew you always would come back together at some point, or you thought that at the time?
I thought that at the time. I mean, it's Kevin's not here. If he listens to this, I'm about to throw a bunch of compliments his way, but you do think pretty long and hard about like, hey, the experiences I've had building companies, what went well, what not, and stuff. And I've met a lot of other folks along the way, and trying to figure out what I want to work with this person. And frankly, there's just a lot of qualities about Kevin that made me decide that like he was basically an excellent person to build a company with. Temperament, drive, I can go on and on. But anyways, I think just pretty much
you can go on a little bit. I'm actually kind of curious, because what you look for in a fellow co-founder is a bit instructive for other people as they're thinking through these things. Because like you're actually enunciating it, but maybe some people like, I think they just have that feeling. So what were some of the attributes? You said drive, there's temperament. What else? You're like, I want to build a company with this person.
Trying to think of an eloquent way to put this and not borrow a term here, but you got to have a wherewithal that this person is going to be able to chew on glass for an unreasonable amount of time and make it out the other side with you. It's a very difficult thing to know if someone, a little bit chicken and egg here, to know if someone has the ability to do that without having gone through that previously with them. I think, frankly speaking, that's one of just like, it's one of the realities, and I have been through that with Kevin, right? And I have very much had, businesses with him that we had great times, and we've had heart-wrenching, just like everything is going to blow up times, right? And that's where I came in with the word temperament, I guess. It was that knowing that you can rely on someone to not get caught up in some of those, difficult times, and help lock arms with you and execute on what needs to be done, right? It's a pretty high bar, frankly speaking. So, I don't know if it's a chicken and egg thing in terms of, it's a very difficult thing to kind of re-emulate, if you will, knew he could do that. So knew I lucked out, working with him the first time. And so, yeah, I think that was probably one of the main drivers. Like, I've seen this guy go through thick and thin, with me. And then throw some other things out there too. Yes, you have to have someone who can, think on their feet, who's smart. Work ethic has to be there. This is a crazy gig in so many different ways. terms of what it demands on you, your family, all these type of different things. And um, yeah, I've just seen it, with him for so long that I think it's a very high bar to overcome for anyone else.
How did you come back together then? You're at Zapier, he's at Amazon,
Yeah.
AWS.
Um, Kind of a little not serendipitously. It basically came down to the fact that like I got the itch again to go build something, and luckily, luck have it that he felt the same way. We were going back and forth on kind of what we would want to poke at here, and I'll be honest, with you, it wasn't like we didn't get together and just say like we were absolutely certain we're going to leave and our great jobs. Again, I've just said it a few times. Zapier is such an awesome place to be. So like, yes, I wanted to go do my next thing, but at the same time, like that's a cool company and privilege if you have is privilege to work at it. Um, but yeah, coming back to Ravenna, frankly speaking, we went through some bad ideas as you typically do.
What was
He
one
was
of those bad ideas? You remember any of them?
Okay, I was saying they're bad ideas, but who knows? Because it could have been good, actually. Maybe I just throw them bad out there.
Ones you chose not to pursue, I guess you could say.
I don't know. There's some cool stuff around, leveraging AI to do like static server generated pages for a mass go to market. Frankly, it's I don't have to go too much into it. I don't know what Wade's conversation with you was on his podcast, but Zapier had a playbook back in the day where they just really good at making SEO driven pages. And that was a manual thing back then, and you can think about how you can use AI to accelerate a lot of that engine nowadays. So something around that neck of the woods was definitely one of the things we're circling on. Um, but anyways, well, what do we get back together on, or why do we get back together? From the Zapier side standpoint, I spent a good amount of time with Wade and Mike and the founders, kind of talking to a lot of just contacts they had and called mid-market enterprise around, hey, this AI thing's here. If you could wave a magic wand, kind of what's your version of like the promised land? It's very open aperture type of like, suggestion, and heard a lot of stuff. One of the hallmarks I think of like the consistent themes I heard was that like feedback around like, wow, I really wish or hope or think AI, if I embrace this thing, this kind of nebulous thing, AI, depends on who you're talking to, that this thing has the ability to help me create like a more efficient organization. And so I saw that through, automations with Zapier, insights. So, hey, a lot of times executives be like, I didn't know what my marketing team is doing. I guess at a high level, do I really know what these folks are doing when we have a couple hundred people? It's hard for me to top down efficiency. I kind of saw basically the understanding of AI or their hope or their promise of it as something where you can kind of bottoms up this. Like if we give people more of the tools to make themselves more efficient, perhaps this is kind of the unlock here. And that is what I just heard over and over. I didn't hear like a ton of external use cases. It was just internal. And so I kind of heard that drum getting beat so many times. I had like my ears poked up for an internal focused operations product, frankly speaking. And yeah, Kevin came up to me and was like, hey, look, I've been at AWS now for a handful of years, and there's this homegrown tool called Simple Issue Manager, which is effectively going back to the beginning of our conversation, an ITSM tool that Amazon homegrown. And he was like, look, this thing is just, like I said before, the grease in the enterprise cogs. If this thing were to grind to a halt, AWS would like just literally grind to a halt. This, would just be an absolute a showstopper. This is a critical backbone for how we get things done here. And that's where we started being like, okay, what's the larger market? Realize that there is quite a bit of a larger market. I was trying to understand what the market even was. ServiceNow is the biggest version of this. There's a lot of big companies downstream of them. And that's really what kind of tipped us off. And then the story comes back to kind of where you and I started just before we started writing code, getting folks on the phone when I worked at Zapier, when he works at AWS, folks in tech, folks in the Midwest, folks like basically like in just even kind of went more broad, I think, than we normally would have, and just trying to get a lot of IT, HR folks on the phone. It's like, cool, you're a user of the software, you know it well. What are the pain points? All these type of things. And that's how we started really kind of developing some of the original theses behind what is now Ravenna.
Taylor, I'm curious, from what I understand, you and Kevin are married with kids. And
Right.
what's that conversation look like with the family at the time to be like, okay, I'm at Zapier. This is great because we know from a hard work chewing on glass perspective, going to a startup.
Yep.
Was there that conversation? What did that look like?
If there wasn't that conversation, I most likely would be divorced right now. Um, um, it's tricky. Like, I'll be honest with you. Like, it's okay. A couple thoughts here. I get asked about this quite a bit by folks who are thinking about starting their own company. And it's tough because I'm lucky in the sense that my wife is one of the most supportive, people on the planet. Um, it's not just that; it's that she was with me during the first kind of foray of this whole thing back when Kevin and I first did this, and so she's seen like what the deal is, right? She knows the drill, and so when it came time to do this, I will say another contrast too. Back when Kevin and I weren't working originally, or weren't started work originally on our first company. I mean, that was ramen diet status, right? Like if it didn't work, like, less ramen or something, it was fine, like it's not really that big of a deal. But now we got two kids. And so it's definitely a deal, and it's a conversation. And, I think I'm speaking for her. My wife at least, knows that it's a passion of mine, that this is truly one of the things that I think I have a lot of faith in and a lot of excitement or personal, excitement in. And I think that, potentially could turn out to a great outcome, but most likely not. But reading by the numbers, who knows? It's one of those things you got to kind of like take a real kind of hard look at like what the actual chances are of doing this. But I don't know. Then you got to take the dive. And so it was a conversation for sure. And I'll just say that I'm blessed to be with my wife, and I know Kevin has similar conversation with his, and I think that we're lucky to be supported by such great folks in our lives.
No, thanks for that. I know, it's not just the founders chewing on glass sometimes, right? It's the spouses and family at times too. At what point do you decide to raise money?
I don't think so Kevin and I were working on this, and we decided that we heard a lot of feedback, and we had kind of a prototype and tried to figure out, okay, like at what point do you raise money? This is summer 2024. And we decided that it would be best to ask some investors that we knew in Seattle their advice. It legitimately was a conversation looking for advice. That conversation ended up in a term sheet. And so we didn't have a pitch deck and everything like that. And that's how the whole thing, frankly, got started. And skipping a couple steps, I had a heart attack when they let us know that they were going to fund it. I just didn't expect to. I kind of thought, like, yeah, we would do something maybe, but I wasn't thinking the next 6 months or 9 months. I don't know. Definitely not that juncture. And that's what kicked off effectively a larger raise. It's got a lot of feedback from friends, ex-CEOs, current CEOs that, hey, you didn't think you were fundraising, but you now are, because you have a term sheet and you don't have a pitch deck, and you got to move as lightning quick, and you just go try to figure out, are those the right folks to work with? Is that the right amount? And skipping a couple of beats, we ended up working with them. Aviel Ginsberg, Chris DeVore, basically the first folks who even had, took a leap of faith to actually have some faith in Kevin and I. And we could not be luckier to be working with them along with our other investors.
Taylor, first of all, thank you. Thanks for sharing the journey. It's a crazy ride. So I appreciate you sharing, and people can check out more and learn more at Ravenna.ai, as we showed on the screen there. I'm just curious from your standpoint, what organizations out there would be good to use Ravenna? Maybe it could be ones you're in conversation with, ones maybe you're not in conversation with, just as you're thinking through the perfect companies to utilize what you have.
Totally. So one of the fun things about, I think, this market is that the need for the software, for internal operations software, it's actually purely a function of headcount. And that inflection point, like when you need the software, changes. It could be 100, 300. It depends on the verticals, and I'm not going to go too much into that. But after a certain point, you need this kind of software, right? We're starting with what we think the big tech forward companies, the folks who are really excited to use like the latest and greatest in tech. And so to answer your question directly, over a couple hundred employees, call it like, new age tech, either VC backed and or just working on some interesting kind of tech products. That's kind of the realm that we're focusing in right now. And after, like I said, 300, 500 people, you're going to have an IT group. You're going to have an HR group. Okay. And that's really just kind of basically the crosshairs for us at this point. And that's where we're starting. But that all said, pretty excited to actually see where this can go. Like I mentioned a second ago, it's purely a function of headcount. So we're excited to, probably in, 2026, start poking around different other kind of verticals outside of tech really, and just try to see, are there kind of more interesting kind of niches, what have you, that we can kind of really hone in on.
Taylor, thank you. Everyone check out Ravenna.ai to learn more. Check out more episodes of the podcast, and we'll see everyone next time. Taylor, thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Jeremy.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.